Good morning. Welcome to my jungle, parenting kids with learning differences. I'm Trish Thompson, and I'm a school psychologist, behavior specialist, learning specialist by trade. I also happen to be a mom of two kids with learning differences. And so here in this station, I share with you kind of the mix of where those worlds collide. Having all the knowledge and the tools that I have from my professional background doesn't always make the parenting part of my life easy. And so I share these things with you really because I want you to know there's so many times I have felt so alone in my parenting. Like, how could I be messing it up this badly? Why am I still having to discipline this stuff? When is it ever going to get better? Am I alone? Are anyone out there feel that way? What I want you to know here is that you're not alone. And I work coaching parents and teachers and families about how to have better experiences parenting and educating their kids with learning differences. And what I know for sure is that the things that you're feeling and you're experiencing are almost universal, and you definitely are not alone. So stay tuned in to the end of this video and hear something that I think all parents of kids with learning differences need to hear. And it's really counterintuitive, but often what we have to know is we can't really trust our instincts. Yeah, that's right. Sometimes we cannot trust our instincts when it comes to parenting because the parenting culture we were cooked in, the way we were raised, the way our culture operates around parenting, and because some of our biological instincts around protecting our kids really compel us to parent in ways that are neither efficient or effective, and that actually are an extreme waste of our time and energy, and it keeps us stuck in this cycle of frustration. Have you ever had that conversation with yourself or your spouse where you're like, literally, we've had this conversation 10 million times. They've never gotten away with it. It's never not been a problem, and they still do it. It's like you're banging your head against a brick wall. I propose a shift in the way we look at consequences in parenting. And this is something I talk about a lot because I think it's so incredibly important. And that shift would be to understand the executive functions that we talk about on this channel all the time, because executive functions are really the underpinning of our child's ability to manage themselves and plan out and execute behavior. And it's something that many kids with learning differences, especially ADHD, they really, really struggle with it. And it's a difference in the way their brain functions. This front part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, is like our secretary. It's really in charge of managing our emotions, our impulses, being our secretary, lining things up, noticing when something's off, and then being able to tweak it so that we get better results. That's our executive functioning system. And when we punish or consequence so that our kids don't get away with it, so that they don't think that it's okay, so they know what they should be doing, when we consequence in that way, what we're assuming is that there's willful noncompliance there. That's really the only time that type of a consequence, in my experience, works, is when there's willful noncompliance, meaning executive functions are age appropriate, they're in order, they're well developed. It's an older child who can predict future outcomes, who can self-monitor and reflect on how their behavior impacts the world around them. They can plan and think about consequences and how certain steps lead to certain consequences. They have good emotional regulation, so they're able to manage their feelings and emotions without overreacting. And they have good response inhibition, so they might think impulsively about doing something. It might cross their mind, but then they're able to stop and control their impulses. That's what would be needed for kids to respond well to a punishment or a consequence, right? Is you're assuming they were calm, they thought through all of their possible choices. I'm mad at this person. I could punch them. I could walk away. I could offer up a compromise. Well, I'm thinking about all these steps. I think I am going to go with the punch. And I know that it's wrong. I know I will get in trouble, but I'm going to do it anyway. How many kids do you know who operate that way? From being a school psychologist, I'll tell you how many. Not many. And they don't even have to have learning differences. Kids' executive functioning skills are not often up and running like in adults. So they're not thinking through all of that stuff. They're not being willfully non-compliant. That's why you can have a kid who is well behaved most of the time, that does a really good job, who's a nice kid with good parents, who goes out, loses their temper, and throws a playground ball at another kid's face in a moment of rage. And when we bring them into the office, they can tell you all the other choices they could have made. They could tell you that they knew they'd get in trouble, but they just couldn't help it. And they're telling the truth. And so a punishment, especially if you add in a kid who is not neurotypical, who is lagging in their executive functioning skills, you add in this punishment, and really all you're doing is shaming them for something they don't really have control over. They're not being willfully non-compliant. Their skills are outmatched by the situation that was facing them. And they made an impulsive decision based on emotionally dysregulated thinking and reactions. So what do we do instead? Because if those punishments worked for kids that have that difficulty over and over and over again, they would stop. The risk of a punishment is that it's a boundary with shame. We want to have a boundary without shame. We want to come again and again with a loving, supportive boundary and with validation for their experience. That's the recipe for supportive parenting. So I want you to think about what that would look like. That would look like saying to the kid who knows that they have chores to do but never does them willingly on their own, even though they're 17 years old, and they shouldn't need a reminder, and they should be more helpful, and la-da-da-da-da-da-da. This is all the language that we instinctively come up with. Not helpful, not efficient, not effective. Okay? So we want to see that junk coming so we can be like, oh, there's my junk again. Put that aside. Let's get down to the business of parenting. I'm going to validate my child's experience, and I'm going to require something of them, and I'm going to provide loving boundaries. So you say, hey, it's chore day. Here's your list. By the end of the day, make sure that's checked off before you get on the video games. You come back later. They're not there. The trash cans are not out. They are on their video games. So you could assume willful noncompliance. My kid is a jerk. They are lazy. They know what they're supposed to be doing, but they're just not doing it. They can't get away with this. And you could go down and you can pull that video game out of the wall and you can say, you're not getting this back until you do the dang chores. You're too old for this. I shouldn't have to be telling you this. How many of you have had a rant and a rave that way? And I will raise my hand because I have done it. Sometimes you just lose it. Did that mean that from then on they did their chores? No, because it's not willful noncompliance. Their dopamine reward system is inefficient. It doesn't motivate them to do things like chores over and over again. They are not planners. They are drawn into the most attractive thing first, which is the video game. It's not willful noncompliance. It's lagging skills in executive functioning. So the shift would be to go downstairs and say, hey, you forgot the trash, so the games are on pause until you go get your chore list done. Thanks. Or you come in and you say, hey, I know how tiring the school day is. I know how much you hate having extra things to do. It's overwhelming. It's another thing that you have to think about. I get it. But doing chores and having responsibilities is a really important part of a healthy, balanced life. And it's really my job to make sure I've got those kinds of routines in our house. So for now, video games are on hold till you get those chores done. Great. It's a slight shift. And it may not even actually get very different results. Do you see how I, as the parent, I'm not actually in control of whether or not my child remembers to do their chores? But I can provide a loving fence to encourage and remind them of what their responsibilities are without further shaming them for something they cannot control. Kids with ADHD are not good at managing responsibilities. Kids with ADHD require reminders. Me being mad about that makes no freaking difference. So it's time to stop being mad and responding and reacting out of this instinctual place, and to really be mindful about when we see that junk coming our way and how we can shift into loving boundaries away from shaming consequences, which are ineffective, inefficient, and a huge drain of our energy. And the cost for our child is more shame. More, why can't I be like other people? Why am I such a burden to my parents? I make them so upset and angry every day. I wish that I could just do better. We want to shift away from that. That is the thing that takes them out in the end. That. So shift. Is my child being willfully non-compliant? My guess is no. Every once in a while, sure. Even then, I'm not going to shame them. I'm just going to say that wasn't acceptable, so here's how you're going to have to manage that. Here's the fallout. And then they're free to make the choice again the next time. But that is a really important piece here. I want you to comment. I want you to reach out to me. I want you to message me. I want to have this conversation. What I really want to hear is your yeah buts and your how bouts. And I want to talk through those things. That's what I do in my coaching calls with people. Yeah, I want to hear from you. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this channel. Parenting Kids with Learning Differences. You are not alone. We need a community. We need to support each other and talk about the things that happen behind our closed doors that we all know and feel, but don't really talk about that often. When we talk about it, we can support each other and we can figure out how to shift into some ways that are more effective and more efficient for us and for our kids. Have a great day. I'll see you next Tuesday. That's when I drop my videos. And until then, like, comment, and share this video. See you then. Bye.